As those who watched the last film will be aware, it's tomato picking season here in Tasmania. And the ongoing process is making tomato sauce. We do other things as well as bottled tomatoes, but first priority is making sauce, and as they pick, around about every week I'm making a batch of sauce. Now, part of that sauce is having a good vinegar and spice base. Now, traditionally in the past I used EzySauce, which was a product which you were able to buy from the supermarket, and a lot of people use that for their tomato sauce. But they stopped making EzySauce. So we've had to come up with our own base. There's a few recipes around on the internet, and you may have tried one or two of those. There's a little bit of variation between them. So I've experimented with them and come up with my own version, which I will share with you today. It's a pretty simple process to make this up. It's good to make it in preparation before you make the sauce. Now, I'm only going to give it a short time, so I'm going to use a little bit of heat to speed the process. But if you don't want to use any heat, you've got more time, you could make this base up a week or two before you actually plan to make the sauce, and just let the spices marinate, so to speak, in the vinegars, and that way some of those flavours will come out a bit better. So what you're starting with is an acid base, and so that's vinegars and citric acid. Now, you can just use a single vinegar, and really it is your choice, but I like to use apple cider vinegar as my main vinegar, and into it I'm going to put 2 cups of apple cider vinegar. As I said, you could choose other vinegars, brown vinegar, white wine vinegar, your choice. You want a reasonable acidity, probably at least a 5% acidity vinegar. I also like to use around 100 mils of balsamic vinegar into it. Now, really, I can't prove that this changes the flavour in a major way, but I think it probably adds a little bit of extra richness to it. A bit slow to get out of this bottle. Now, to the vinegar, I'm adding citric acid, and I'm adding a tablespoon. I'm using a bread making measure here, which has got the 2 measures that I will need, a tablespoon and a teaspoon. So a tablespoon of citric acid will go into that. And that just increases the acidity of the base. So now we've got the spices. There's 2 lots of spices. There's the teaspoon spices, which are these 2 here, and also the tablespoon spices. So I'll start with the teaspoon ones. Now I'm using cloves, just 1 teaspoon. Now this also has allspice in it, so if you weren't using allspice, you could use more cloves, or alternatively you could not use the cloves and just use the allspice. Now, this one is cayenne pepper, and this adds quite a bit of heat to it. I'm using a full teaspoon because I like a reasonably warm sauce, but it doesn't make it really fiery. If you wanted it really fiery, you could add more of this, so just add the cayenne to your taste. Now, out of these tablespoon spices, the number 1 is black pepper, and I use a full tablespoon of ground black pepper into it. Now, I have tried using whole peppercorns and things like that and heating it, but it didn't give the same depth of flavour or strength of flavour as using the ground herbs. Now, ginger, I put a whole tablespoon of ginger in. Now, with the traditional EzySauce recipe, that was added later, not to the base. And allspice, I'm adding a full tablespoon of allspice. Now some of them have nutmeg in and things like that. I don't really think that's necessary when you're using allspice because of the range of flavours that it represents. Now here's the last two spices, and these ones are my addition. You won't find this in any of the recipes on the internet. And first of those is Smokey Paprika, and Smokey Paprika adds a little bit of depth of flavour to it. This amount of a tablespoon won't make it especially smoky. And the last spice of all is mustard, and again that's not one that's usually used, but I think it just adds more flavour to it. So with all those in the pot, just give them a good stir. Now break up any lumps. Now as I said, if you're going to make the tomato sauce a little bit distant, like a week or two, just put it into a container. Give it a shake every day or two, it'd be good just to keep it stirred, and you'll get a nice base that way. But because I want to make my sauce today, I'm going to actually warm this, and that will speed up the process. I definitely don't want to boil it, I just want to bring it up to a simmer and then let it sit where the heat can absorb. I'm just continuing to break up the mustard, particularly likes to stay in lumps. Now of course it's really important what you're actually mixing that base with, so I'll give you a quick rundown on the recipe, but if you want more detail on the process, I do have a previous video on making this tomato sauce, and I'll put a link to that in the corner. Basically I'm going to fill this 12-litre pot with tomatoes cut up, and I'm going to heat those a little bit so that I can reduce them down. I'm going to pour off some of that liquid. I'm not going to cook them entirely, but just heat them, sweat them so to speak. Pour off some of that liquid, which is not going to be wasted. I'm going to use it for drinking. Then to the remaining tomato, which is generally around about 2/3 of this pot, or say around about 8 litres, I will add this spicy sauce base to it. To that I'll generally add half a cup of salt and around 600 grams, so it's around 2.5 cups of raw sugar. Now the sugar I generally adjust to flavour a little bit later, but generally start with that 600 grams. In the previous recipe I used xylitol. If you have the xylitol to use, you don't need as much xylitol as you need raw sugar. I haven't got any xylitol at the moment, that's why I'm using raw sugar. I will also add around 8 to 10 onions, depending on size, and generally a whole bulb of garlic. I generally use the elephant garlic because it's easy to work with. I run those through the food processor, put that in and cook it. Once that is cooked reasonably well, I actually blend that with a stick mixer and cook it a little bit more, adjusting the flavour with the sugar particularly, generally not anything else. And then the final stage is to thicken it with around 2 tablespoons of guar gum. Now I use the guar gum just sprinkled on top and mixed in with the stick mixer, and that just gives it a little bit more body. Then when it's nicely boiling and really hot is when I bottle it. The bottles are full and I don't process it afterwards, it's just, that's it, it's finished once it's sealed up. And the result is a nice sauce like this. Now, there is Cider 2 shows in here because I don't put it through a mulli and remove seeds or skins. If you would like to do that, have the time to do that, that's fine. I don't actually find it a problem in using it that it has those seeds or skins. Actually, when I come to eat it, I don't notice that at all. It is a spicy sauce, but it is not exceptionally hot. As I say, you could add some chilies to it, or you could add more cayenne if you really like a hotter sauce. Have a go and let me know how you like it.